Namaste and welcome to the realm of Damru and our series of talks as a part of our ongoing yoga festival Bilva. Every year we invite experts and scholars from various indigenous wellness traditions from across the country and abroad to conduct workshops and seminars at our facility. Well, this year, looking at the current condition, we have shifted the whole format online, which I think is a blessing in a disguise that a lot of people are now being able to access such expert and scholarly talks. And these interactions are very, very precious in terms of understanding our own culture a little more better. So this year, the theme for Bilva Festival is Bharatiya Parampara, rebuilding the strong foundations of our own cultural roots by understanding our culture a little better. We are focusing on topics that are chosen from the Sanatana Dharma and to enlighten people in the current generation to get or a slightly deeper understanding of how profound our culture is already, and we are, there's that distance that we are connecting. Maybe this is a small effort to create a bridge between us and our own roots. So today, as a part of Bilva Festival, we will be talking to Dr. Jayaramana. He comes from the KYM Institute, Chennai. The topic for today's discussion is Vedic Dinacharya, the ancient science of aligning with our own biorhythms. You have heard about circadian rhythms. Sir will definitely go in detail about it today in the talk. Introducing Jayaraman sir. He is one of my mentors when I was studying at Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram. Jayaraman sir holds a PhD in Sanskrit from the University of Madras with a gold medal and first rank both in his undergraduate and postgraduate studies. He works in the research department of Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram since 2010. His works in the field of textual aspects of yoga involves editing, translating, and disseminating inputs from traditional Sanskrit literature on yoga. Thus far, he has worked on 12 books on yoga and equal number of peer-reviewed journal articles on yoga. He works towards developing immersive learning materials of yoga texts. Yogasya Bhasha, a 4-part self-learning material on Sanskrit and yoga. Yoga Vaisharadi, a searchable web repository on classical texts of yoga, a few of his noteworthy contribution to the recent times. And a part of this formal introduction, just to throw some light, we were at KYM learning the Vedic chants. His was the class that we would so eagerly be waiting for. And a lot of times, the whole chant that we were supposed to cover in one class, we would end up doing just one shloka and he would go in such detail. And it is amazing when we start learning in detail about our own culture. It is just a treasure house of so much wisdom and knowledge. And I think Jayaraman sir has delved into the depths of those treasures, I would say. So, not taking more of your time, I would hand over the session to Jayaraman sir. Sir, welcome so much to Damru.
Namaste. So thank you, Mauliji, for the generous introduction. So, as you rightly pointed out, the Sanatana Dharma is a vast ocean. It's like a vast ocean, and as Kalidasa would put in Raghuvamsha, that he himself is a small boat in the great ocean. Similarly, I am also not even a boat, I'm just a raft in that ocean, trying to travel as much as possible and gain as much of inputs as possible. So now I think we will go into the topic. Thank you for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to share some ideas on the concept of dinacharya. So the Vedic dinacharya. So we are all practitioners of yoga. So uh, in the practice of yoga, the practice of yoga, we know that gives so many benefits, and because of that, even the United Nations, by the efforts of India, United Nations also now has declared, or in 2014 has declared yoga as a very important uh, practice, lifestyle practice. Since 2014 we are celebrating the International Yoga Day to create more and more awareness about yoga. And yoga is part of the Vedic tradition, and yoga, as everyone knows, and even the UN declaration on the International Yoga Day notes that yoga is not just another therapy or any other healing practice. It is a holistic lifestyle practice. So it goes along with the life. So uh, hence the concept of dinacharya that we have taken up is about how we spend life. So how do we use our time in the life properly, so that it is for the well-being of oneself, and also we are able to contribute to the society that we live in a good manner. So with this background, in the context of yoga, the daily practice is very important, and we see that there is a beautiful verse in Bhagavad Gita, which many of you rasya yukta cheshtasya karmasu yukta swapnavabodhasya yogo bhavati dukkhaha. It's a Bhagavad Gita 6th chapter shloka. It says yoga will mitigate sufferings of a person whose diet, physical activity, daily transactions and sleep are appropriate. Yukta ahara, vihara and cheshta and swapna and avabodha. So yoga is not merely what we do on the mat. There are so many off the mat factors like ahara, vihara and vyavahara, and also the sleep and the right kind of waking up. So this is dinacharya. So ahara, vihara and karma cheshta. Karma cheshta means whatever activities that we do or whatever transactions that we have with the world outside. So all these are contributing factors which will make our yoga effective. So every day I do yoga in the morning and evening, but if these other aspects like ahara, vihara and how I transact with people around and what is the level of my sleep, if these are not taken care of, my daily practice of yoga will not be very helpful in overcoming the sufferings that a person is undergoing. So these aspects of yoga, like ahara, that is food, vihara, that is how are we physically active, and then transactions, how do we interact with people around, and when do we go to sleep and when we wake up, all these are nothing but dinacharya. Dinacharya is daily activity. Dina is daily, day, and charya is activity. So what we do on a daily basis, incrementally when we do good things, things which are
contributing to yoga, then yogo bhavati dukkhaha. Yoga will help in overcoming the sufferings. So that we see here that this is why yoga is called as a lifestyle rather than a limited period practice on a mat. Yoga, when combined with these ahara, vihara, vyavahara, that is karma, cheshta and sleep, it becomes really helpful, and that's why it is also called as lifestyle, right from the morning till evening. So if we lead this kind of a kind of systematic life, then yoga will be more useful to us. And all our shastras, all our disciplines, they have contributed to this concept of dinacharya. So all the texts in the Vedic tradition, so most texts or almost all texts in Indian tradition, they have their source in the Vedas. Swami Vivekananda would say that both the orthodox and heterodox traditions, they have their source in the Vedas only. So be it the systems that accept and follow the Vedas, or be it the disciplines which are not considered as Vedic, like Buddhism, Jainism, all these also have derived certain inspiration from the Vedic lore only. So this is the view of Swami Vivekananda. So, and with regard to the current concept of dinacharya, as to how we manage our day-to-day life, we see so many disciplines contributing to this concept of dinacharya. So many shastras contributing inputs on how we should spend our daily life from dawn to dusk. So, for example, the important and the rich source of input on dinacharya comes from the Ayurvedic literature. Especially for this talk, I have taken the inputs from a very authentic text on Ayurveda, very important text on Ayurveda called Ashtanga Hridaya by Vagbhatacharya in the 7th century. So in the Sutrasthana chapter and the second chapter of Sutrasthana. Sutrasthana is a major division in Ashtanga Hridaya. In the second chapter of Sutrasthana, we have the Dinacharya. This Ashtanga Hridaya not only speaks about Dinacharya, it also speaks about Ritucharya. Ritu means in every season, the daily schedule will have certain changes also. So even that is spoken. So this takes care of especially this dinacharya input, this dinacharya knowledge from the Ayurvedic text addresses the individual health. Now, another source or another discipline that contributes, another Vedic source that contributes to this dinacharya is the Dharma Shastra. Dharma Shastras are also called as the Smriti literature. So the Shrutis or the Vedas are primary references of knowledge, primary sources of knowledge that were given to us by the rishis of the past, and Dharma Shastras are codes of living, how to live at an individual level, at a social level. So how should one conduct his life? So those codes of ethics were developed in the text called the Dharma Shastra. There are so many texts on Dharma Shastra which speak about the individual life, the social life, what are the codes and principles that are to be followed in Dharma Shastra. So in Dharma Shastra texts, there are Manusmriti, Yajnavalkya Smriti, Parashara Smriti, and so many texts are there. So for this talk again, I have chosen the Yajnavalkya Smriti, inputs from Yajnavalkya Smriti on Dinacharya. So if Ayurveda contributes or takes care of the individual health perspective into Dinacharya, the Dharma Shastras look into the social health perspective in connection to Dinacharya. So even in Yajnavalkya Smriti, which is a 3rd century text, much more older than Ashtanga Hridaya, which is a 7th century text. So in Yajnavalkya Smriti, in the first chapter, in the Achara Adhyaya, there is Grihastha Dharma Prakarana. So how should a householder conduct his day-to-day activity? So in that we find inputs on Dinacharya. And then the third and final source on Dinacharya is from the yoga literature itself. So Hatha Yoga Pradipika is a very famous, important text on Hatha Yoga, which is very popular across the globe. And in Hatha Yoga Pradipika, so for the text, there is a commentary called Jyotsna. In chapter 2 on pranayama, for verse 48, there is a detailed commentary. There the commentator Brahmananda, in the course of prescribing the pranayama practice, insists on a systematic dinacharya for a practitioner of yoga. So so if the Ayurvedic inputs are for individual health, on dinacharya Dharmashastra gives inputs for social health, and from yoga we see the dinacharya being considered from both the health perspective and also the spiritual angle also is brought in by the dinacharya. So these are the three basic texts that are taken as the sources of inputs for the description of the activities in the Vedic manner from dawn till dusk. So you can also see in the presentation there is a color coding. So wherever there is an input from the Ayurveda text, it will be in green. From Dharmashastra it is blue, and from the yoga literature it will be in the orange color. So I will also mention, but this is for a general input. Now let us directly delve into the dinacharya, so the daily schedule. So the first activity is waking up. So the Ayurveda literature in Ashtanga Hridaya, it is stated that swasthaha rakshartham ayushaha brahme muhurte uttishtet. So a healthy person, to protect his health and to ensure longevity, he should wake up early. When? In the Brahma Muhurta. So the Brahma Muhurta is a very auspicious time or the appropriate time to wake up. So when is the Muhurta? So Brahma Muhurta is a duration of 48 minutes, and 48 minutes that ends 48 minutes before the sunrise. So Brahma Muhurta's duration is 48 minutes, and those when is that 48 minutes? The 48 minutes ends before 48 minutes of the sunrise. For example, if sunrise is at 6 o'clock, then the Brahma Muhurta period is 4:24 to 5:12 p.m. So 5:12 is the ending of Brahma Muhurta, and that is 48 minutes before the sunrise. So 4:24 to 5:12 is the 48-minute duration of Brahma Muhurta, which is ideal for waking up. This is what the Ayurveda gives, the input gives. Then when it comes to waking up, then how long should one sleep? That question also needs to be addressed. So the Smriti texts, it says that yamadvayam shayanastu brahmabhuyaya kalpate. So one is expected to sleep for 2 yamas. 1 yama is 3 hours, and so hence 6 hours of sleep. So 6 hours of sleep is a regulation for every person. So if 6 hours a person can sleep, bare minimum at least, so or a healthy person, for him 6 hours sleep is essential, and that will lead to a blissful, a healthy life. So after 6 hours of sleep, at least 6 hours of sleep, one should wake up during the Brahma Muhurta. It's very interesting that every aspect has been systematically addressed. Now, after waking up, one should immediately run into one's or jump into one's activity. No. One should wait. So waking up, one should just sit up in the bed, and Ayurveda text says that one should first become aware of one's body and one's health. So one should think, the first thing one should think is immediately after waking up is to look inwards and observe whether the food that has been eaten previous night is digested or not. One should try to observe whether the food has digested or not. Is there heaviness or uneasiness in the abdomen? So all that should be observed first. The body, the health of the body should be observed first, immediately after waking up. And the Dharmashastra text further says that one should also, on waking up, should think about what are the works that has been done the previous day and what lies ahead in the day to be done. So again, we see that it is a very mindfulness in life is brought about in the dinacharya itself. It is not jumping out of the bed and running to the bathroom. It's being aware, becoming mindful in starting one's daily activity. And then the Dharmashastra text also says that yes, of course, one has to think about what has been done in the past and what is to be done in the future. One should also observe about the health. How is my body? Is it healthy? Am I feeling heavy or am I feeling fresh? Am I rested well? So all those things one should observe about the body. Only when we observe about ourselves, appropriate measures can be taken. And the Dharmashastra text also suggests that some naughty problems, in the sense very klishta or complicated problems of Shastras, if a person is a scholar or about one's own life, there will be certain unresolved problems. If it may be philosophical or transactional, or questions may belong to various realms. So those difficult, complicated questions, if one can bring to the mind, the answer may flash, because it is the Brahma Muhurta in which one wakes up. So in that peaceful time, many complicated issues, we may find the answer at the peaceful time. So these are all the suggestions. It's not that all these have to be done. So whichever is appropriate, one should appropriately incorporate in life. So whereas in the yoga text, in Hatha Yoga Pradipika, immediately after waking up, what is advised is remember the Guru, focusing on the head, and then meditate or just think about the personal deity, the Ishta Devata, in the heart. So this is the immediate activity that is proposed after waking up in these texts. So just now we saw waking up and activities connected to waking up. And there are also our regional traditional practices also, where we say that Samudra Vasane Devi Parvatastana Mandale Vishnu Patni Namastubhyam Padasparsham Kshamaswame. So that prayer is also there, where we salute Mother Earth and we also seek forgiveness from Bhumata, that for the rest of the day I'm going to walk on you, so kindly forgive. So with that sense also waking up is advised in our Vedic tradition. Now after waking up, it comes, so we come to the cleansing of the body, and there are so much of inputs on this, and we see that first the teeth cleansing comes about. And the teeth cleansing, the Ayurvedic texts insightfully clearly mention that cleansing the teeth should happen in the morning after waking up, and also the meals. After every meal the teeth have to be cleansed, and also after waking up. So this is a very clear input. And then in the process of cleansing the teeth, one should not hurt the gums. So various brushing instruments will be used, or various sticks from the trees and herbal sources will be suggested. So while brushing the teeth or cleansing the teeth, danta pavana, in that process, one should take care that the gums are not hurt. So various herbs or herbal sticks or twigs are prescribed, like arka, neem, banyan, khadira. So the twigs from these trees, these plant sources, are advised for the cleansing of the teeth. And then after, so this is about the oral health. After that, cleansing the teeth, one should apply collyrium. Collyrium is applying a herbal paste around the eyes. So this also cleanses the eyes, and the Ayurvedic texts say that clarity in vision is achieved. And but one thing is, one should not, there are so many types of collyrium available in the market, but there also there are certain specific Ayurvedic prescriptions which are made up of Savira, Rasanjana. These are certain prescriptions. So one should be advised to take a right Ayurvedic advice from the physician, and then apply the collyrium, or choose the appropriate collyrium with the kajal. So it has to be taken with the advice of a proper Ayurvedic expert. And then, so after oral health, the health of the eyes are to be taken care of, and then herbal drops through the nose. So and it is said in the Ayurvedic texts that herbal drops through the nose helps in overcoming diseases in the limbs above the collarbone. There are also, again, what are the herbal drops to be used? For that also there are prescriptions like Anutaila and others. And so after the herbal drops comes inhaling medicinal herbal fumes. So again, there are certain prescriptions, or what kind of herbal fumes are to be prepared, and they are available with the Ayurvedic practitioners. And the inhaling of herbal fumes are of two types: preventive and healing. So every day, which is done as part of daily regimen or dinacharya, so that is preventive type. So for that, certain specific herbs are prescribed, and certain others herbal fumes are there in the Ayurvedic medical lore, which heal certain illnesses, again in the region above the collarbone. And so this is about the nasal passage, cleansing of it, and then treating it with the herbal medicines. And then comes the Gandusha and Kavalakriya. So Gandusha and Kavalakriya involve again filling the mouth and holding certain liquids, again herbal liquids, for a certain period, which will enhance the oral health. And Kavala Kriya especially refers to the gargling of the mouth with gingerly oil and such other fluids, and chewing of the betel leaf is also prescribed, so to take care of the oral health. So teeth is connected. So Danta Pavana initially that we saw is about the dental health. So here Gandusha and Kavalakriya takes care of the entire oral health. So thus we see the teeth, the eyes, the nose, the nasal, the sinus, the passages, that is taken care of, and also the oral region is also taken care of in the process of cleansing the body. It's not yet over, it still continues, where after this comes the Abhyanga. Abhyanga is massaging the limbs or applying oil in the body, in the limbs of the body, especially in the joints. So this is Abhyanga. If not daily, at least regularly, weekly, once or twice, it is prescribed. So Abhyangam acharet nityam. So as regularly as possible, abhyanga or oil application should be done. So what are the benefits of oil application? Oil massage removes the weariness of old age, tiredness, reduces vata related issues. Oil massage or abhyanga bestows good eyesight, nourishment, glow in the skin, longevity, bestows good sleep and stability and firmness. So this is abhyanga. So first application of oil. So that massaging the limbs with oil. So that is abhyanga. After that, immediately again not taking bath. After abhyanga, vyayama is to be done. So after oil application, physical exercise has to be done. So only then the oil will be absorbed well. When the body is given appropriate movement, like Surya Namaskara and other practices which are holistic, in the sense which touches or which covers or which activates almost all part of the body. After oil application, if one does, then the benefits of the oil, so that is absorbed better. So abhyanga and vyayama follows abhyanga. And also there is a caution given in the Ayurvedic text: while doing vyayama, people will be enthusiastic, and there is a possibility that there will be ativyayama, excessive vyayama. So in that context, a beautiful advice regarding vyayama is given, where it is said, as one should avoid excessiveness in laughter, in staying awake at nights, in travels, so also in vyayama. So ati hasa, ati jagarana, ati yatra and ati vyayama, all these are four things which are to be carefully moderated. So vyayama also comes under moderation. So some people may think the more I exert myself, the more I become healthy. No, everything has to be done in certain limits and boundaries. So that caution is given in the text themselves. So after vyayama, the appropriate rest has to be taken for a few minutes, and then comes the process of udvartana. So udvartana is applying on the body the herbal powder or herbal pastes. There are specific Ayurvedic prescriptions which are made up of Ayurvedic material like Vibhitaki, Amla, Diodar, Senna, etc. So material or herbal pastes and powders made of this are appropriately used. So this makes applying the herbal paste after vyayama, some rest, and then udvartana process makes the limbs firm and cleanses the skin. So after udvartana comes bathing. So normally we do bathe every day, but it is very interesting and important to note that our ancestors, they have noted the benefits of not only noted, they have systematically documented the benefits of bathing. So bathing bestows reproductive capability, long life, nourishment, enthusiasm and strength, and also it removes itching, dirt and impurity, sweat, laziness and dullness are overcome. Thirst is also addressed. Some people may have excessive thirst. Sometimes bathing will bring it down. Burning sensation and sinful and negative intentions also, so they are also overcome or removed. So bathing not only has physiological outcomes, it also acts upon the mind as a calming influence on the mind. So it comes, so this bathing, there are also so many further inputs on bathing. So when to use hot water, when to use cold water, and which are the limbs where hot water can be used, which limbs hot water cannot be used, should not be used. So below the neck hot water can be used, above the neck the water should be mildly warm or cool. So excessive hot water should not be applied on the head, that is above the neck region. So all these further details, I'm just hinting it, there are so many further details on bathing also. So this is from the Ayurvedic realm. When we think about the yogic flow of daily schedule, we see that after waking up, saluting the guru and also the personal deity Ishta Devata, answer the nature call, cleanse the teeth, and then start yoga practice. So this is about the this is the yogic regimen that is given, where immediately the practice of yoga is given importance, whereas in Ayurveda the emphasis is on each and every limb of the body. So it all depends on where our focus lies. And one more thing, so all these activities can be accommodated, maybe not daily, so in a week or in a fortnight, etc. It can be appropriately incorporated, all these inputs that are given. Now, so bathing, till bathing we have come. So after bathing, so what is to be done? After bathing, so we take the inputs from the Dharma Shastra. The Yajnavalkya Smriti says Sandhya Vandana, daily worship of the sun god, and then offerings to Agni, and then chanting of the mantras related to the Surya or sun god, and then even reciting the Vedas. So one can have a question. So salutation of the sun, all these sound too Vedic, and is it applicable to everyone? So to that, the standard reply that we see in our ancient tradition, and that and my teachers have also taught, is that whoever lives under the sun should worship the sun, because so no one can be excluded from worshipping the sun. No one has an exclusive rights over the sun salutation, in the sense it is wide open, it is applicable to everyone. And sun, Surya, is derived, actually the term Surya itself is derived from the root that indicates prerakaha, the one who inspires. So after bathing, we have to salute the sun, get inspired by the rays of the sun. Dhiyo yo naha prachodayat. So he inspires our intellect. So we have to align our day in such a way that we are there just before the sunrise, and we are saluting the sun, and then seeking that he enlightens our intellect. So in this way, after bathing comes sun salutations, and those who can chant the Vedas, that is ideal. And after bathing comes a little study of some texts, some knowledge. So every day we should enrich ourselves. Our Shastras are very clear. Every householder has to enrich oneself in various fields. So we know that our Purushartha, the goals of life, has been given by our Shastras: Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. But from a day-to-day perspective, we should enrich ourselves at least in 3 disciplines: Dharma, Artha and at least Arogya. So Arogya is the basis for Dharmartha Kama Mokshanam Arogyam Moola Karanam. Arogya is the foundation for all the Purusharthas. Hence we should study a little about health sciences, and then we should study a little about Artha, that is acquiring and maintenance of wealth, and Dharma, what are our duties and responsibilities. About this there is a lot of literature in our tradition, a little by little. So 2 pages or 1 page. So these, some kind of knowledge accumulation and assimilation has to happen every day. So after sun salutation, this is what the Dharma Shastras prescribe. And then, so the yoga text also accepts or goes by the sun salutation. And in the morning, so after bathing, after sun salutations and then a little study, we come to the Ayurvedic input, where we see that food has to be consumed after bathing. So again, in the food, what kind of food? Susnigdha madhuraharaha chaturthamsha vivarjitaha bhujyate shiva samprityai mitaharasa uchyate. So the food should be mita, in the sense in moderation, and food should be beneficial. It should be according to our health, easily assimilatable, and also it should be shared with others, and it should be partaken to as an offering, or as an offering to the Shiva who resides within. So these are the qualities of, there are even much more inputs on consuming food, but these are certain basics. So that which is beneficial according to our health, in moderation, sharing with others, and also as an offering to the indwelling divinity. With these attitudes, food consumption should happen. And then the Dharma Shastra says, it's a very important input. We see that how do we go about after the morning food, the commencement of day's transaction begins. The Yajnavalkya Smriti says, if necessary, one has to then go to the king or a resourceful person for yoga. Yoga is apraptasya praptihi, acquiring new things, and kshema, protecting that which has already been acquired. So if necessary, one has to approach a resourceful person or a higher authority. Otherwise, for one's daily livelihood, it is not appropriate that we work under someone, in the sense that we are these days, our Prime Minister is also speaking about Atma Nirbhara. Our Shastras also say that being a salaried person, more than that, it is important that we develop self-reliance, we develop scholarship, we develop certain skills, so that we can survive on the strength of our own skills. So self-reliance is very important. So that is emphasized in our Dharma Shastra as to how we look into our livelihood. So this is the day's activity. And then in the noon, again the Dharma Shastra text says bathing and sun salutations. And now along with the noon activity, we see the Pancha Maha Yajnas, the 5 great rituals that are to be done by a Grihastha, that is presented as an activity to be done in the noon. So if we are working under someone, then the time is not ours. So whatever is declared, or that the time that we have committed, so we have to be there. So but whereas when we are self-reliant, when we live based on our skills and capabilities, then the time is with us. But this may not be applicable to each and every person, but as a teaching, if this is instilled in the mind of the children, then when they grow up into householders, or when they become matured, they can guide their or develop their life in such a way that their time is in their hands. So so in that context, we can look into the noon's activity. So so the bathing, sun salutations are also there in the midday. So it is not that we think about the sun once in the morning and then we forget. So our life is aligned with the sun according to the movement of the sun. So again we align in the afternoon with the sun. So midday we salute, we remember the sun, and then offering food for the fellow beings, not only fellow human beings, but fellow beings, animals, birds, insects. So Bhuta Yajna. And then making ritualistic offerings to the departed ancestors and mains, Pitri Yajna. And then worshipping gods in rituals, Deva Yajna. And then studying a Vedic portion, a little bit of a Vedic text, that is Brahma Yajna. And then serving the guests, that is Manushya Yajna. So these are the 5 Pancha Maha Yajnas which are to be done by a Grihastha as applicable. There may not be guests every day. So as applicable, these are the Pancha Maha Yajnas that are to be done every day. And these Pancha Maha Yajnas are part of the noon, midday activity. So when we go into the yoga text, so we see, so in the yoga text, that is Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it is again to be noted that it is for a monastic yogi. So where he has dedicated his entire life only for the practice of yoga. So in the morning he practices yoga, and then in the noon also one has to practice yoga once again, then have lunch, and after lunch Purana Shravana, he has to listen to the teachings in the Puranas and the Itihasas, and then sing the glory of the God in the afternoon till evening. So this is the schedule for a yogi, whereas for a grihastha, this is the input for from the yoga literature is a monastic kind of input. For a grihastha, all these responsibilities, a householder, all these above responsibilities given in Dharma Shastra can be seen. And then, so when after performing all these yajnas, we come to the lunch, and the grihastha couple, the householder couple, should eat what remains after serving food to children, elderly, pregnant women, ill, unmarried, guests, and domestic helps in the family. So everyone should be fed. A householder couple should ensure that everyone in all the dependents are fed. Only then, after that, ensuring that they have to sit for their meal, and then food should never be cooked only for oneself. So it should only be cooked for others, and then whatever remains are to be partaken. And then, and in these days of eating out, but due to corona, no one eats out much these days, but prior to corona the culture of eating out was there. So the Dharmashastra texts say one should not have a desire to eat food at others' place. So one should always cook at one's own home, share it with others, and whatever remains, that should be taken. So eating out was not prescribed. We know, now we know the perils of eating out, but the texts also clarify that accept invite for feasts from good people. And even when we accept invitation for feasts, overeating should be avoided. So mitahara should be followed. And then interestingly, on days when guests are there, the guests have to be served to their satisfaction. And finally, after the lunch, when the guest leaves, one has to walk behind till the limits of the building, limits of the village, limits of the region, depending upon the stature and also the learnedness of the guest. One has to decide the limits of following the guest. See, these are beautiful cultural practices, that how we with great respect welcome the guest, treat them, and then even while sending off, we just don't slam the door shut behind them. We follow the guest at least till the end of the building, at least till the road, or at least till the end of the region. So depending upon the greatness of the personality. So this is beautiful aspect of Vedic culture. And then comes the activity in the evening. So after again, so when the sun is about to set, sun salutations is to be done. So the point is, so when the sun arises, we arise, and when the sun comes in the middle, we are in the middle of our activity, well aware of our roles and responsibilities, doing the Panchamaha Yajnas. When the sun is setting, we also slowly wrap up our activity. So a sun-oriented life is the mark of Vedic life. So here, after evening sun salutations, when the sun is about to set, and then offerings in Agni is done, one has to offer prayers and then eat moderately. At night, nati triptya. Fully, one should not full oneself with food at night. The food, especially at night, should be moderate with all the dependents. So again, the householder should ensure that all the dependents are fed, and then he also, or the couple should also eat moderately and then go to bed. So the commentary on the Dharmashastra text clarifies that one should also think about income and expenditure and other domestic issues, and then eat and go to bed. So this is how a small addition has been given from the commentaries. From again continuing the yoga schedule, we see here also, even in the yoga practitioner, we see there is sun salutation, and there is a evening practice of yoga, and then one eats food, and there is a middle of the night yoga practice also. So there are 4 yoga practice sessions for a monastic yoga practitioner. So this is how his day goes about. And the Ayurveda text also says, just before the wrapping up of the day's activity and going to the bed, how do I spend my time in daytime and night? So in this manner, one should be mindful of one's activity. So especially before going to bed, one should think what I did previously and what is to be done ahead. So this mindfulness should be brought about. This is clearly mentioned in the Ayurvedic text. So when one is aware, one is mindful of where one is in life and what one is doing, then suffering will not be experienced. So in this way, right from the morning till the evening, these various texts from Ayurveda, Dharma Shastra, and also yoga, they give us wonderful insights to lead a life in harmony with the movement of the sun, the movement of the nature. So according to the vibrations of the nature, we schedule our activities. Now these are the activities in terms of time, but there are certain inputs on day-to-day hygiene also. So what are the hygiene related inputs in daily life one should look into? The Ayurveda text says, while sneezing or while laughing or yawning, one should cover the mouth. So already there was very good awareness about one should not be the cause of spread of contagious infections. So one should always cover one's mouth. So that is mentioned in the Ashtanga Hridaya Dinacharya portion itself. So, and then when there are urges, the natural urges of the body like urination, for defecation, sneezing, coughing, etc., one should not hold it back, or one should not deprioritize it. So they have to be, when there are urges, the urges are to be prioritized and they should be addressed, or else they again will further create various other problems. This again brings in the focus back on the body. So one should be aware of what one is doing. So this is when we become, or when we try to follow some inputs of Dinacharya, already we start leading a mindful life. And again, so trimming of the long hair, long nails, long beard, the legs, nose, ears, and all parts of excretion should always be kept clean. So such hygiene awareness is given in the Ayurvedic text. And with regard to appearance, so Dinacharya in day-to-day life, appearance also matters. So wearing good clothes, using good perfumes, and appearance also should be bright but without being excessively prominent. So beautiful ideas as to how in a balanced way, so balance samatvam in every dimension, right from appearance to food to emotions. When we bring in that samatva in all the dimensions, we will be less flustered, less disturbed by the various influences. And then the Ayurveda text says, have a pleasant smiling face. And then while going out, always carry an umbrella, wear footwear, and look only 4 arms lengths ahead and walk. The very Dinacharya prescribes that while going out, our focus only should be 4 arms length ahead, and we should not allow our eyesight to wander here and there, so that we might unnecessarily get into various other problems. So if we follow this, we are safe. And there are again various other contexts, behavioral inputs also in Dinacharya. So Dinacharya has these dimensions also. Dinacharya is not merely about waking up and going to bed or bathing, etc. How one conducts. So initially we saw ahara, vihara, and vyavahara. What is the conduct? That is also important in Dinacharya. We see, so when meeting others, we are the ones who should say Namaste first. So one should speak first. Purva Bhashi. In Ramayana, we see Rama is the Purva Bhashi. Whenever he meets another person, he is the one who will greet first. So this is a very good conduct, very important. And then one should not enjoy pleasures all alone. So the attitude of sharing. And then this is again a very balanced input. One should not trust everyone, nor should doubt everyone. So one should be uh, uh, balanced enough to judge whom to trust and whom not to. And then this is the central piece of all activities, all approaches in Vedic life. It says in all practices and activities, eccentricities and extremities should be avoided and moderation should be followed. And then to attain happiness, one should follow only the path of dharma. What is the path of dharma? 10 things are to be avoided. So when we practice dharma, it means by implication we are not doing 10 things. Himsa, steyaha, anyatha kamaha. A list of 10 things are given. That is injuring, stealing, illicit desires, speaking ill of others, harsh words, falsehood, unconnected utterances, contemplating others' doom, inability to tolerate others' virtues, not trusting the Shastras. So all these are the things which are to be avoided. If avoided, then which means we are naturally in the path of dharma to attain our happiness. There are certain other do's and don'ts also, like as mentioned earlier, one should for no purpose, be it for physical exercises or mortify the limbs, or nor should they be satiated too much. We should neither satiate the limbs or the sense organs, nor should they be tortured or mortified. And then this is again a very important activity of overindulgence should be avoided. In the sense, with regard to the activities of body, speech and mind, we should be aware when we are tiring out. When we are feeling that we are about to tire out, that is the place where we have to stop it. It's not that we get exhausted and then we fall down. It should not be that way. One should be again mindful enough to say enough before getting extremely tired. And again, how to look, that is also defined. So at all times one should not look at the sun with naked eyes. It should be very harmful. And then one should not stare for a long time, should not strive to look at minute things without the aid of anything else, of a magnifier, etc. Or very bright things should not be looked at. One should avoid looking at impure and undesirable objects. So see, these are wonderful minute descriptions that each and every activity of life which are part of day-to-day activity has been closely observed, and beneficial practices are advocated. So that is the detailing which is amazing in the Vedic literature. And this fourth point to me is the best kind of advice that we get from our texts. One should not be jealous of others' achievements, but one should be jealous about the means as to how they achieved. For example, if someone is very successful in life, it's not appropriate to be jealous of the success of the person. Rather, oh, what kind of hard work he had put in, what systematic living, planning and executing of his day-to-day life that he had done, which has led to his success. One should be jealous of that, in the sense I should also practice or plan my activities and train in such a systematic manner so that I should also achieve success. So jealous not in the result, jealous should be in the means. How do I improve myself? So that is a very beautiful input that is given from the texts. So we have seen from the morning to the evening and certain day-to-day hygiene related inputs and appearance and other prescriptions in Dinacharya we see. So any person who follows, the Ayurveda text says, any person who follows this will attain long life, good health, wealth, and fame. Is there any doubt? And even heaven and other such higher realms. So we see that lack of focus on our own personal health, that has is, or it certainly causes health burden. So we don't take care of ourselves in a systematic manner, then there may be certain ailments due to wrong lifestyle, and then it adds to burden, both of health related burden, which is in terms of economic burden, and also a burden and a suffering in the mind. So all that can be avoided if we look into how we are living our lives. And hence, so these are the so in when we look into these dinacharya related inputs, so we ourselves will become healthy. Atmano mokshartham jagat hitaya cha, in the sense, when we are hale and healthy and happy, then we naturally, our human life is such that when we are contented and happy, we naturally radiate that happiness around. So to radiate happiness around, we should be hale and healthy. For that, it is very important that these inputs from dinacharya are noted. And finally, to conclude, I would like to say this. In this, what is the takeaway? So you might have heard this lecture for the past an hour and a few minutes, more than an hour. So what can I readily incorporate in my life? So inputs that were presented with regard to appearance, conduct, and hygiene can be readily applied to the life. So where so many activities are related to the cleansing, applying of collyrium, inhaling the herbal fumes, and applying nasal drops, for all that, yes, they are all good, but not at once. So there also moderation is needed. So various caution should be taken. What is our current health, desha, kala, vayas, vritti? Krishnamacharya, Acharya, Yogacharya Krishnamacharya used to say that these are to be carefully noted before taking anything external into the body. So even for the practice of yoga, all these are to be considered. So when we look in the dinacharya about consuming certain herbs nasally, or through the mouth, or inhaling them, so we should be careful, consider our health, and also consult a appropriate expert in doing it. So this session was just an awareness creating session, where we see that all these aspects have been dealt in the literature. And then we see that so many inputs are there, so many minute aspects are there. So it is just overwhelming kind of information. You might feel that, but the point is, one change at a time. So it can be scheduled appropriately, once in a time, or once in a day we can bring in one appropriate input from dinacharya, or once in a week. Or if once in a week is also too much of a scheduling, then once in a fortnight, or at least once in a month, one small change, one positive touch from this Vedic way of life can be brought in, so that we are better from where we were in the past month. So in this way, one can systematically program and then accommodate our these vast inputs that are there in the Vedic lore. And so this session, the goal of this session is based on a particular shastric way of thinking. In our shastras, it is said, jnanam, ichha, and kriya. First is knowledge. We get to know things, and then desire comes, and then we go into the action. So this session was giving certain inputs in terms of knowledge about how the Vedic dinacharya is, and then comes, it might trigger some desire to incorporate it, and then we gradually get into the action. So what we have done in this session is the first step, and it will be really useful to gradually incorporate these ideas in our life. And lastly, to motivate about the day-to-day transformations that we need to do, I would like to share a couple of quotations from The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. It's a very popular motivational book which is based on lots of inputs from the Upanishads, Vedas, and our Shastras. So in that text, we see that saying that you don't have time to improve your life, and your life is like saying that you don't have time to stop for gas because you are too busy driving. Gas here means petrol. So saying that you don't have time to improve your life is like saying that I don't have time to stop for petrol because I am very busy driving. So it is, we have to decide or prioritize what is important in life, and we have to allocate time for this. So these inputs on dinacharya are like this, which need to be appropriately prioritized. And all lasting changes need time and effort. Persistence is the mother of personal change, and hence, so doing it for one day, doing it for 1 week or 1 month and leaving will not or may not sufficiently bring about the change. So persistence, even in yoga we see dirghakala, nairantarya, satkara. So when for done for long time with great reverence, and then in regular intervals when we do it, then the real change comes. Persistence is the mother of personal change. And finally, when you insert any activity in your routine by doing it the same way and at the same time every day, it quickly grows into a habit. So when we do all these things and systematically insert one activity, one input, one insight into our daily schedule, then we develop it as a good habit, and then we move towards a very happy and satisfactory life. So with these words, I would like to conclude my presentation, and I thank Mauliji and Tamaru Studio for giving me this opportunity to share these thoughts. Dhanyavadaha.
So like you said, the jnana is there now, the ichha is already ignited. Now we'll have to work towards the kriya part of it and see how much we can incorporate in our lives. But thank you so much. It was amazing today to so much of detailed explanation has already been given about each and every hour of our day. So, sir, can we take some questions if that is okay for you? Because there
Absolutely,
are
madam.
already a lot of questions, and I think some of them you've already answered, but we will just go through them. Some are new, some are answered already.
Yeah, I
Okay.
will be happy. Yeah. We can take some questions. Yes.
First question is, I think it is already answered, but nonetheless, I'll read out. The hectic schedules that we follow these days, how can one maintain a dinacharya even if he or she intends to? Do you want to go or it is answered? I'll leave that to you.
Yeah. Yes, of course. The lifestyle is very hectic, but yeah, as I pointed out in that quotation from the monk who sold his Ferrari, we have to stop our vehicle to fill petrol. Only then we can go the extra mile in life. So in these days, what we need, what is the word that is used is higher productivity, going that extra mile. How can we go extra mile when we pause and add some quality to life?
Thank you, sir. The next question is how relevant it is to learn Sanskrit in today's times. Is it just for the glory of the past, or does it find any present day application in our current lifestyles?
Thank you for asking this question. So all the inputs for the past 1.5 hours that you have seen on Dinacharya are from the Sanskrit sources, and you will agree with me that these are all very practical inputs which are very applicable even today. So though these are inputs from the 7th century, the 3rd century, but we see the Sanskrit texts are very thoroughgoing. They observe. So the inputs or the records that we have in the form of Sanskrit texts are very thorough. The details that they provide, as we just saw, how to look, how to refine one's looking. So not to stare at minute things or not keep looking at the sun. So from those minute details to how to structure the entire day's activity, all these are found in the Sanskrit literature. The point is, the more we learn Sanskrit, the more we become empowered, or else we will always have to depend upon secondary sources.
Very true. Okay. So someone is asking, you mentioned about the concept of Rutucharya in the beginning. Are there some other cycles as well like these, and also throwing maybe some light on Rutucharya? So like in Dincharya, while we are focusing on the rhythm of day and night, in Rutucharya, how does that work? And if there are other rhythmic cycles mentioned similarly?
In Ayurveda, what we see is our the body is made up of, the Prakriti is made up of the Vata, Pitta and Kapha. So from the yogic terminology, we use the 3 components, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. From the Ayurvedic background, when we look at and analyze the way of life, we see Vata, Pitta and Kapha. And then as the seasons move ahead, the impact or the implication of the season on our constitution of Vata, Pitta and Kapha, they change. And so it's very interesting in Ritucharya that between 2 seasons, which there is something called as the Ritu Sandhi. So in the conjunction of 2 seasons, one should be very careful. Ayurveda says, Ritu Sandhishu Vyadhayaha Jayante. In the conjunction between 2 seasons is the period when various diseases manifest. So when we transition from spring to the next season, we should be careful about the sandhi, the junction. So in that, there will be imbalances in Vata, Pitta and Kapha. If we appropriately modify those, then we can comfortably transition into the next season. So inputs about these are provided in Ritu. This is the bare minimum input. So, so the Ritu Sandhi is there, how we manage through that junction. And then when we enter into the Ritu proper, what are all the kinds of inputs, or what are all the kinds of lifestyle changes that we have to, or lifestyle tweaking that we have to appropriately do, so that we comfortably sail through that Ritu. All these details we will find.
So I feel that a lot of our sufferings these days are just because of lack of knowledge about that which is already given. So these days we so many times hear people, oh, nothing, it's just seasonal. They suffer and they just feel that it is okay because this has to be that way. It doesn't have to be. It's already so much already given. Okay, the next question is, where can I find a detailed reference to Dinacharya as a translation that lay persons can understand? Also, which is a good source of reference to find original texts or their authentic translations where a normal person can study things about our culture, because so many times we are questioned about the authenticity of things and we can't explain well. Understanding the purpose and benefit of such practices, so of yoga as well as other day-to-day rituals that we follow, like some particular author or tradition or publication that you would recommend.
Yes. So it is always good to have a good source of knowledge input. So on these Ayurvedic Dinacharya related inputs, the ideal thing is to learn Sanskrit and go to the source. That is the best way. But of course, I know that it is a process. Gradually we learn Sanskrit, then consult the Ashtanga Hridaya and the commentaries, which is very rich. But for the time being, there are so many standard English translations directly to the text. The point is, sometimes the translations which are done directly to a Sanskrit text may be bit difficult in the beginning. For example, we buy groundnut from the market. What do? Or we buy vegetables from the market. What do? We cleanse it, and especially in these corona times, we cleanse it, we take care that it is put in the warm water, we refine it, and then put it for cooking, and then derive its benefits. Similarly, though it is initially difficult to learn Samskrita, etc., okay, that comes later, it is good to take a direct translation of it and then spend some time with it and then try to understand. So it is like just taking some time to cleanse the vegetables and other things, processing it for cooking. So direct translations, though initially bit difficult, so one can spend some time with the text or discuss with some scholar who is available around to understand the import of the translation. If someone says, no, I don't have time for even this, there is another path. In our Shastra, the point is how to do things easily. They have always simplified the path in this manner. So even if this is difficult, then what can be done? There are certain good English books by trusted authors like David Frawley and others who have written very wonderful summary, authentic kind of information on both yoga, Ayurveda and all such aspects. So one may begin with this, go into the direct translations and ideally move into the direct sources of Sanskrit texts and the commentaries.
Thank you, sir. So, okay, so somebody has asked two things in one question. You had mentioned collyrium for the cleansing of eyes. Somebody's asking, does collyrium mean kajal or is it to be mixed into kajal or what is it? And once again, second thing the same person has asked is, you had given the mantra Samudra Vasane Devi. They said that generally we do Karagare Vasate Lakshmi. So which one to choose? So these two things.
See, I use the word collyrium just as a translation because I didn't find any other English word to indicate the word Anjanam. Anjanam is the word in Sanskrita. So Anjanam is again not just a charcoal or any other such thing. So it is a herbal preparation which is available in the, should be available with standard Ayurvedic product manufacturers. So that's why while mentioning in the talk itself, I indicated that not any kajal that is available in the market should be or to be used as part of the dinacharya material. So it is a herbal Ayurvedic collyrium that one should take. And Samudra Vasane Devi and Karagre Vasate Lakshmi, both are beneficial. So whichever is good can be taken. So in that slide where I mentioned what to be done immediately after waking up, there are many things that can be done. One can think about the health. One can think about a complex question that is bothering the mind. So in that way, there are so many options or so many things. So we can choose. That is the variety that our tradition offers. So, and it is also interesting that that it also depends upon the state of our mind. So what is going through our mind? So should I start based on the previous day's experience, should I start with a sense of forgiving? Then it is Samudra Vasane Devi. Then again, should I start the day with blessings and energy? Then Karagre Vasate Lakshmi. So depending upon the kind of attitude that we need to instill based on the previous day's activities or the past activities, we can choose appropriately.
Very, very true. Next question is, can you slightly elaborate on the ritual of Sandhya Vandanam and its significance?
Yes. Sandhya Vandanam. The word Sandhya means junction. Junction of the day. So there is a Sandhya in the morning. There is a Sandhya in the midday. And then there is a Sandhya in the evening. So the junction between the night and the morning is Prata Sandhya. The junction between the forenoon and the afternoon is Madhyanha, Madhyanhika Sandhya, and then the junction between the evening and the night is Sayam Sandhya. And from the practitioners of yoga, Hatha Yoga, there is a midnight junction also. The junction between the night and the next day's beginning hours. So for a yogic practitioner, there are 4 practices in 4 junctions ideally, but from the normal householders or normal day-to-day, those who are leading the normal day-to-day life, at least one should be aware of these 3 junctions in life. In the sense, what happens is we are so much caught up by life, we are taken over by life, that we are not aware of what we are doing at what part of time and what is happening around us. Especially in these days of coronas, we are always staying within the 4 walls. We do not know what's happening. Even in our when the situations are normal also, we are not aware of the desha and kala. So everywhere in our rituals, desha kalau sankirtya, we should be aware of where we are and when, at which part of time we are. So then appropriately we will be able to manage our life better. So the point is, the Sandhya Vandana activity is basically to bring in the awareness to now and here. Oh, this is the morning time, this is the afternoon, this is the evening. So this awareness is basically brought, and then in Sandhya Vandana, as I mentioned in the course of the talk itself, we align with the movement and the intensity of the sun. So the rising sun inspires us into the life. So Dhiyo Yonaha Prachodaya, that is the mantra we say. What is Dhiyaha? Sayanacharya, the commentator, says Dhiyaha means intellect. Dhiyaha also indicate the karma, actions. Dhi shabdaha karma vachyaha api. So dhi indicates actions. So dhiyaha prachodayat, which means let all our actions be inspired by the sun. So we derive an inspiration with the sun. And again in the midday we stop. So everywhere in yoga practice, especially in our tradition, we say after every movement, pause. Before, so which will give us some time as to what we have come, and then from where we have come and where we have to go. It's a good thing to stop and pause at every junction of time. In midday, we stop and pause about and reflect about the previous days, previous durations activity. There are mantras where we say that I have done, I might have gone or moved away from the path of dharma in the forenoon. Let me bring back, center myself in dharma, and then go ahead. Similarly, at the end of the day, in the presence of Agni, so the sun will be about to set, and now the Agni will be glowing bright. So in the presence of Agni, I reflect upon the previous sessions activity. Have I moved away from dharma? Am I in the path of dharma? So I should be in the path of dharma. Let the sun inspire me. So every time we center ourselves in the path of dharma by these Sandhyavandana activities which appear in each session. So in again I'm reminded of a quotation from the monk who sold his Ferrari. As I mentioned, that if one reads the book, it is full of references and quotations from the Vedic and Upanishadic literature only. There he says, who will be the person who will be successful in transforming oneself? He says, a person who is acutely aware of oneself. So what I'm thinking, what I'm speaking, and how am I conducting oneself? If one becomes aware of that, one will be a better person. So Sandhya Vandana is to bring about that acute awareness about oneself, so that one is balanced, grounded, centered in the path of dharma.
Okay, that was a completely new light on generally Sandhya Vandanam. I think we just do it without understanding, just as a ritual to be done twice or thrice a day. But this is so important to stay aware and aligned to our path and a constant reminder. So, wow. Okay. How is it important for yoga teachers to learn, know, or understand Sanskrit language?
So this has been already mentioned, and as I mentioned, the certainty about knowledge. So for every practitioner, yoga practitioner and yoga professional, a question will come in the mind: am I doing it in the right way? What exactly does the text says? This doubt will come in the mind: am I in the right path? So if we are, as I mentioned, if we are empowered by the knowledge of Samskrita, we can directly consult the source and assure ourselves that yes, I am in the right path. So whenever I am confident about my knowledge, that confidence will reflect my practice. The practice that is done, which is done confidently, only will lead to success. We know in Yoga Sutra the 9 antarayas: Vyadhi, Sthana, Samshaya. Samshaya is an important antaraya, doubt. If I am doing my practices with a sense of doubt, I'm not sure. My practice is not steady. So that samshaya is overcome, and by the knowledge of Samskrita, we are grounded, we are empowered, and we are confident about what we are doing. So we will reach our goal with certainty.
Just one or two more questions. Is it okay? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so then I will choose from two. Okay, when you mentioned one needs 6 hours of sleep, two yamas, does that apply to the ancient lifestyle, or also is it relevant even to the current day, because our level of physical activity has dramatically dropped due to the digital age?
Yes, what I mentioned was at least 6 hours. So it depends. See, it all depends upon who we are and what we are doing. But for our rhythms, bodily rhythms get get back to normalcy, at least we have to give 6 hours of rest to the body. Anything lesser than that is not prescribed at all. So as we worship Lord Mitra in the morning, so in Sandhya Vandana, I'm reminded, in the morning we worship Mitra, who is the source of light. At the end of the day, we worship Varuna, the Lord who calms down, who cools us down. So every night we have to calm down, cool for 6 hours at least. Only then we will be rejuvenated to do our activities next. So bare minimum 6 hours is needed for the body to replenish its energy or go through the processes and get back to the next day's activity.
I think, yes, we are done with our questions now. So, thank you, sir. Thank you so much for such a deep, knowledgeable session. I really wish that all the people, children, adults, especially the teenagers, that's a good age where they can inculcate all these in their daily lifestyles, hear this and try to imbibe these suggestions to modify their lifestyles. And so, as a therapist, I feel most of the imbalances and diseases that I encounter every day can be rectified just by following a simple but so important daily ritual or a habit. I think this session has been a great learning for myself as well, and I surely intend to gradually incorporate these teachings in my life before I start telling others. I mentioned gradually because right now, yes, it seems too overwhelming or difficult, but like you said, one thing at a time. So gradually trying to incorporate things. And I think with a strong intention, the universe will also help achieve this kind of like harmony, balance, and alignment within. Here, I should share with the viewers about the lessons that I've taken from Sir on understanding the yogic text of Hatha Yoga Pradipika. So, somebody had asked the questions related to why study that. So, from my own experience, I have now come to know how immensely enriching it is to learn directly from the original text. So Jairaman sir makes us understand the deeper meanings of the shlokas and their implications at so many levels, and more importantly, he equips us to dispel all the, what to say, the hocus pocus or all the extra additional things that are being added and said about the practices by some teachers, by maybe their limited perspective, and then attributing it to the original seer. So I think as teachers, we also need to be updated and aware of what actually is taught or mentioned and what needs to be distilled away. So I really feel grateful to be learning from Dr. Jairaman, who teaches the original texts as they are without diluting, adding, or removing from what is offered originally. And if we want to uphold the Sanatana Dharma, then I feel at one hand, yes, we need to connect deeply and study our own culture, but on the other hand, also be vigilant of what we are learning, so as not to go into blind superstition or incomplete or wrong understanding. Another thing he touched upon today was the wonderful concept of Atmanirbharta, which in today's context I feel is very relevant personally. And if each of us do our own little bit, we can jointly contribute so much at a national level and even at a larger level. So Sir Jairaman sir travels globally on a similar mission, and I really wish him all the very best for his noble activity. He not just has right intention, but is also bestowed with the correct in-depth knowledge about his subject. So I feel in current India, there are very less people of his stature contributing to the field of Sanskrit research and teaching. If you would have seen his slides, he would not have stated anything just like that. He will have the text and the shloka and the page number, and that is inculcating a habit of always giving a correct reference whenever we are sharing something with others. So really grateful for that, and we're blessed, sir, to have this opportunity to hear and learn from you. And Team Damru looks forward to interact with you again and again in future. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, madam. We will conclude with the Shanti mantra.
Yes, sir.
ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.